There is a version of you that exists right now in your 30s, quietly panicking about money. Even if your bank account looks fine on the surface. You smile in meetings. You post the vacation pictures. But somewhere in the back of your mind, a question keeps circling. Am I actually behind? Here is a number that might answer that question in a way you were not expecting. According to data from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the median net worth for Americans under 35 is just under $40,000. Not $40,000 in savings. $40,000 total. House equity, retirement accounts, everything combined. If you are sitting there doing the math on your own life right now, feeling a knot form in your stomach, you need to hear this clearly. You are not as behind as the internet has convinced you that you are. But you are also not where you could be. And the gap between those two truths is exactly what this video is about. Your 30s are a strange decade financially. In your 20s, almost nobody expected much from you. Mistakes felt forgivable, but your 30s feel different. The stakes feel higher. The pressure feels louder. Suddenly there are mortgages, or the absence of one feels like failure. There are weddings, kids, aging parents, career plateaus, and a creeping sense that the runway for figuring things out is getting shorter every single year. Here is what nobody tells you about this decade. It is not actually about catching up. It is about something far more important and far more achievable that almost nobody focuses on. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what that is, and more importantly, exactly how to build it starting today, regardless of what your bank account currently says. Let us start with the myth that is quietly destroying people's confidence in this decade. The myth that there is a normal timeline you are supposed to be following. A house by this age. A certain salary by that age. A retirement number by another age. Where did this timeline even come from? Nobody can point to it. It does not exist in any economics textbook. It exists in comparison, in old family expectations, and increasingly, in a highlight reel of other people's curated lives. Think about a marathon where every runner started at a different point on the track, in different weather, on different terrain, but everyone is judging their pace against a runner who started 10 miles ahead of them. That is what social comparison does to financial confidence in your 30s. It is not just discouraging. It is mathematically dishonest. Here is a statistic that should genuinely surprise you. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that income volatility, meaning how much someone's income jumps up and down year to year, is significantly higher in your 30s than most other working decades. Career changes, side hustles, layoffs, promotions, children entering or leaving daycare costs. Your financial picture in your 30s is not supposed to look like a smooth, steady line. It looks more like a heart rate monitor. And that is normal. That is not failure. That is simply what this decade looks like for almost everyone, even the people who appear calm and composed online. So if catching up to some imaginary timeline is not the goal, what actually is? The real goal of your 30s is building what financial psychologists call your foundation decade. Not your wealthiest decade. Not your richest decade. Your foundation decade. This is the decade where the financial habits, systems, and decisions you make will determine the slope of every decade that follows. Not the dollar amount you have today. The slope. Picture two hikers standing at the base of two different mountains. One mountain has a gentle, steady incline. The other is steep and jagged at first, but levels into a long, smooth ascent. From where they are standing, hiker one looks like they are making faster progress. But zoom out 20 years, and the second mountain, the one that demanded more intentional climbing early on, ends up reaching a far higher peak. Your 30s are where you choose which mountain you are climbing. Not based on how much money you have right now, but based on the systems you put into place while the climb still feels manageable. And this is where most people make their first real mistake. Not a mistake of laziness. A mistake of misplaced priority. Because there is one specific number that almost nobody in their 30s is tracking, and it matters more than their salary, more than their savings account, and more than the price of the house they are trying to afford. The number that matters more than your salary is your savings rate. Not how much you earn. What percentage of what you earn actually stays with you and goes to work for your future? Two people can earn wildly different incomes and end up in wildly different financial positions, with the person earning less actually ending up ahead, purely because of this one number. Here is why this matters so much in your 30s specifically. This is the decade where lifestyle inflation quietly creeps in and attaches itself to every raise you get. You get promoted, so you upgrade the apartment. You get a bonus, so you upgrade the car. Your income goes up and somehow, mysteriously, your bank account does not feel any different. A report from a major financial services firm found that nearly half of Americans earning over $100,000 a year still report living paycheck to paycheck. Read that again. This is not a problem unique to low earners. This is a problem of unconscious lifestyle expansion, and your 30s are exactly when it accelerates, because this is often the decade your income starts climbing fastest. Here is where it gets dangerous. If you do not consciously decide what happens to each raise before it arrives, your lifestyle will decide for you. And lifestyle is a hungry, silent force. It does not announce itself. It just slowly absorbs every extra dollar until you look up at 38 and realize you make twice what you did at 28, with almost nothing extra to show for it. So what is the fix? It is simpler than you think, but it requires a decision most people are never taught to make. Before you spend a single dollar of any future raise, bonus, or income increase, decide in advance what percentage of it goes straight into savings or investments. Not after you see your new lifestyle possibilities. Before. This single habit, deciding the destination of new money before it ever touches your hands, is one of the most powerful wealth-building behaviors that almost nobody talks about. Now let us talk about the second pillar of this foundation decade, because savings rate alone is not enough if the money just sits there. Picture two people in their 30s, each setting aside the exact same amount of money every single month for 30 years. One keeps it in a regular savings account. The other invests it consistently in a diversified portfolio. Assuming a typical long-term market average return, the investor ends up with several times more money than the saver, despite contributing the exact same amount, dollar for dollar. The difference is not effort. It is not income. It is simply whether the money was put to work or left idle. This is the part of your 30s that quietly determines your 50s and 60s. Not because you need to become an expert trader or obsess over the stock market daily, but because consistency, started now, has decades to compound. A dollar invested at 32 has significantly more time to grow than the same dollar invested at 42. Not slightly more. Significantly more, because compounding accelerates the longer it runs. Here is something most people in their 30s have never stopped to calculate. If you increase your monthly investment contribution by just $100 starting today and maintain that for the next 30 years at a typical long-term market return, you could be looking at well over $100,000 in additional wealth by retirement, just from that single change. $100 a month. That is often the cost of a few subscriptions or one extra night out a week. But here is the layer almost nobody addresses, and it is the one that makes your 30s uniquely complicated compared to any other decade. Because while you are trying to build this foundation, save more, invest consistently, resist lifestyle inflation, you are simultaneously facing the most competing financial demands of your entire life. Aging parents who may need support, children who may need college funds, a career that may need a leap of faith, a relationship that may need a wedding or a home. All of these pulling at the same limited pool of money, all at once. This is where most financial advice falls apart, because it assumes you are optimizing one variable in isolation. Your 30s demand something different. They demand a way of thinking about money that holds multiple competing priorities at the same time, without letting any single one quietly sabotage the rest. And there is a specific framework for exactly this, one that almost nobody discusses, that changes the entire equation. That framework is what we are covering next, because once you see it, every financial decision in this decade becomes dramatically clearer. The framework that solves this is something financial planners call the bucket method, and once you understand it, you will never approach competing financial priorities the same way again. Here's how it works. Instead of treating your money as one giant, undivided pool that every goal fights over, you split it into 3 distinct buckets, each with a different job, a different timeline, and a different level of risk. The first bucket is your safety bucket. This is cash, sitting in a high-yield savings account, covering 3 to 6 months of expenses. Its job is not to grow. Its job is to exist quietly, so that a layoff, a medical bill, or a broken car does not force you to sell investments at the worst possible moment. The second bucket is your near-term bucket. This covers goals arriving in the next 2 to 5 years. A wedding, A house down payment. A planned career break. This money should not sit in raw cash, because inflation will quietly erode it. But it also should not sit in aggressive investments, because you do not have time to recover from a downturn before you need it. This is where more conservative, stable investment options come in. The third bucket is your growth bucket. This is money you will not touch for 10, 20, 30 years. Retirement. Long-term wealth building. This is where the real power of compounding lies. And this is where you can afford to take on more risk, because time is on your side to absorb the market's natural ups and downs. Here is why this framework changes everything. Most people in their 30s feel constant financial anxiety because every financial decision feels like it is competing against every other one. Should I save for a house or invest for retirement? Should I build an emergency fund or pay down debt faster? The bucket method ends that internal conflict because each dollar already has an assigned job before the question even comes up. You are not choosing between goals anymore. You are simply directing new money into whichever bucket currently needs it most. And here is the data point that makes this even more urgent. According to research from a major record-keeping firm, people in their 30s who set automatic, structured contributions across multiple financial goals report significantly higher financial confidence than those managing money reactively, even when their actual income and net worth are nearly identical. This is not about how much money you have. It is about whether your money has a plan or whether you are just reacting to whatever shows up in your life each month. So here is the truth this entire video has been building toward. Your 30s are not about hitting some imaginary number on some imaginary timeline that was never real to begin with. They are about building a system, 3 buckets, a rising savings rate, and consistent investing that quietly works in the background of your life while you actually live it. The version of you in your 40s and 50s is being shaped right now, not by how much you have today, but by the structure you put in place starting this week. You do not need to catch up to anyone. You need to build your foundation on your terms, starting with whatever you have right now, even if that is far less than you wish it were. If this video gave you a clearer way to think about your money, do something simple. Hit subscribe, because this channel is built entirely around moments like this one.